Good evening and welcome to another episode of Vantage Point here on Newsfirst. There's just 15 days more for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the much anticipated summit where we will see leaders from over 50 countries coming to Sri Lankan shores to discuss issues pertaining to the Commonwealth of Nations. Now, certain countries have confirmed that they will be participating, certain countries have confirmed that they will not be, while our closest neighbor is still in two minds whether it is going to participate or not. In the midst of all of this, the Sri Lankan political arena is heating up. A lot of developments taking place in the Sri Lankan political arena ahead of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. To discuss all the political developments that have occurred in Sri Lanka over the past 2 weeks, I have with me, as usual, former Sri Lankan permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva and currently a political analyst, Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mahina. Good evening. Good to be back.
Well, Doctor, let's start off with the Sri Lankan political arena. We saw last Friday the Northern Provincial Council elections the Northern Provincial Council session took place. The inaugural session after elections were held after a period of 25 years. We saw C.V. Vigneshwaran, the Chief Minister of the province, taking charge at the Northern Provincial Council. What do you think would have been discussed in that initial session?
Well, what we do know, what's in the public domain, is the speech that was made by the Chief Minister, the inaugural speech. And looking at the visuals, quite apart from the speech, it seemed to me to be a very dignified affair. It was conducted with the seriousness, discipline. It looked like a serious-minded provincial administration and a chief minister who took his role very seriously. It was a mission statement in that speech, a very clear political message or set of messages which have to be analyzed by Colombo and by all of us in the public domain. There have been some adverse reactions already in the press by government officials and so on. It was a very important occasion and a very important speech.
Now, the Ilanka Tamil Arsu Katri, which is the alliance that has control of the Northern Provincial Council, after the election, it secured 30 seats at the council. And we saw ministers who were appointed to the council swearing in. Now, there was a lot of confusion, I could say, about where before whom would they be, taking oaths. Certain ministers took oaths in front of the chief minister. The chief minister himself took oaths in front of the president. However, there were individuals who took oaths in front of their own party leaders within the ITAC. So, I mean, doesn't this kind of show that the Ilanka Tamil Arsu Katri are yet to find that sort of common thread that would bind everyone in the party? Or is there still certain, let's say, hostilities between each other in the parties? How is that going to be ironed out for the next couple of sessions or in the future?
Well, of course, the TNA is a coalition. But even within the preeminent party, the ITAK, alias the old federal party, there seemed to be more than one view. I think the volatility that you see is a reflection of the dynamics in Tamil politics which go beyond the shores of Sri Lanka. There's what's happening in Tamil Nadu, what's happening in the diaspora, and the TNA and the ITAK steering within a frame of what we may call pan-Tamil politics. So it's not just the politics of the Tamils of Sri Lanka. Now this is not a very happy development. One would expect that the Sri Lankan Tamils of the north would operate primarily within that framework, but there's also a reality, and we have to recognize the reality that those walls have collapsed, and Now Tamil politics consists of concentric circles, perhaps not even concentric circles, it's very fluid. So you have the politics of the north intersecting and interacting with the politics of South India, and that too interfacing with Tamil diaspora politics. And all of this is reflected in the volatile political behavior that we see being played out in the north today. For instance, Justice Vigneswaran had said in an exclusive interview given to the Times of India that the Indian Prime Minister should attend the Chogam. This was a reiteration of something that he had said in connection with Sri Lankan politics before, that he's opposed to the idea of boycotts, which is very sensible. But Mr. Sambandhan, to whom Justice Vigneswaran is very close politically, has said something a little different on his visit to Tamil Nadu.
I was going to get to that point where he actually made a statement from the BJP headquarters, and he said that he wants to hold talks with all leaders in Tamil Nadu or in India to bring to their attention the political situation in Sri Lanka, which he says is not conducive.
Well, it's natural that he would want to talk to all the political parties. Look, man, it's a simple human thing. If you feel that you're not being treated well or you don't have enough space in one arena, then you operate where you feel more welcome, where you have more elbow room. So he's gone over to Tamil Nadu and he's talked there. But what is interesting and a little distressing to me is the implicit message that Mr. Sambandhan has sent out, which is that the government of India should take into account the views of the Tamil Nadu political parties when it makes its decision. Now, I would have expected a clearer message from Mr. Sambandhan, very similar to the one that Mr. Vigneswaran sent out, which is, please come, attend the Chogam and tell the government of Sri Lanka what you think needs to be done. But they're not on quite the same page.
Exactly, because if someone that is saying that the central government should listen to what Tamil Nadu has to say, we saw recently Tamil Nadu passing a resolution saying that the Indian Prime Minister, or in fact the entire Indian delegation, should boycott the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting and suspend Sri Lanka as a member of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, until equal rights are secured by the Tamils.
These are members of the same alliance. We have C.V. Vigneswaran, R. Sambandhan, two very powerful figures in the alliance. And when such contradictory views are being expressed from either party, I mean, what sort of picture does this give?
A very dangerous one. It's dangerous because I don't think Colombo has quite figured this out. There is a tendency, there are two tendencies, neither of which are hurtful. One is to relish the obvious contradictions within Tamil politics and say, look at those guys, they're divided. And the other is to just say no. As young women used to be advised a long time ago, very simple advice, just say no. So whatever C.V. Vigneswaran says, the preliminary response of the state, that may not be the final response because the president has not said anything, has so far been no. Now, neither of those responses are helpful because what's going on is that much as we may disagree with what Justice Vigneswaran has said or what Mr. Sambandhan has said, what lies behind or beyond are more radical currents. Mr. Sambandhan is trying to adjust to those tendencies within Tamil politics which are more radical than he, which say that really the tug of the current from Tamil Nadu, which is really more radical than that of Sri Lankan Tamil politics. So he feels himself caught. Now this is unfortunate. This is not really necessary. If they studied Northern Ireland, for instance, the IRA didn't take its cue from the American Irish community, which might have been a little more emotional. In fact, it led that community and said, no, we've entered the Good Friday Agreement, we know what we're doing, and we think this is the way forward. The TNA is not giving the lead in that manner to Tamil politics and Tamil public opinion. And when it does give the lead, it's not even sure in which direction it should steer. One day it is constructive and it is part of Sri Lanka, or it is seeking to be part of Sri Lanka. Another day it is ambivalent about whether or not the Indian Prime Minister should attend Shogam and whether or not it will attend Shogam. There was an unconfirmed report that the TNA has, after a 3-hour meeting, instructed Chief Minister Vigneswaran to boycott Shogam. Now, this is not the smartest thing to do, because Shogam is a very good opportunity for Tamil politicians to interact with world leaders. But if their mentality is such that the only politicians in the world who matter are those few of the West who will in any case visit Jaffna and talk to them, and that the rest of the Commonwealth doesn't really matter, so they don't have to participate, well, that indicates a frame of mind. Now, that's a challenge to Sri Lanka. It's not a challenge that should be met by, growls, as we have done so far. But it does indicate that we have a very complex and risky period unfolding.